Hello everyone, I'm Matt Williamson. Steelers win 3-1 going into the bye. It's a pretty nice place to be considering the state of the NFL right now. And I gotta say, this Ireland trip has been a pretty nice place to be as well from yours truly. Just got back to my room, grabbed a Guinness from the lobby. Gotta love that. Freshly poured Guinness right from the lobby. Being here all week was awesome. I'm still not adjusted to the time difference, not that you care. But the people, the fans, I'm so happy. I mean, I always want the Steelers to win, but I'm so happy for Steelers Nation and the people that made the trip that they did end up winning, because there was a chance there that they could have flat out blown this, to be very honest with you. And some of that I kind of blame Tomlin for, some of those decisions at the end. I mean, punting, I don't mean to start with the negative, but punting and just blasting it into the end zone at the end of the game there to only pick up 19 yards. I mean, that's what you gained from that. And then the other one too was, I was cool with Rodgers convincing Tomlin basically to go for it on 4th and goal, but I'm not going to give it to a 180-pound running back. I mean, that's not my play call. I'm throwing a post ball to Washington or Metcalf, or giving Rodgers 3 options, but that is not my play call. Maybe we could blame Arthur Smith for that, but that definitely was run by Tomlin. But all in all, I thought the coaching staff did a really good job. I thought it was a great Arthur Smith game. I thought it was a better Terrell Austin game. And I can give Tomlin some crap for, those late decisions, which have never been his specialty. But this is not an easy game to prepare for either. I mean, these guys are not working on optimal rest. There's a lot of distractions. They basically practiced at this castle that was supposedly awesome in the pictures and what people told me. So there's a lot of things going on. He kept his team focused, and they came out hot. And for the majority of this game, I thought they flat out dominated the Vikings, to be honest with you. I mean, it was a shame to me that it actually came down to the end. That Addison long catch and run after you didn't get the touchdown, pinned him on the one, you let up like a 90-yarder. It's like, oh no, you could lose this game. But anyways, as we often do, I'm going to buzz through some halftime stats. I'm going to buzz through the final stats, and then I got a bunch of observations. And frankly, at the half, it was 14-6, and I really thought, man, the Steelers have really very little to worry about. I mean, Rodgers had 2 incompletions on 14 attempts for 165 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions. And maybe I even should have led with this. I thought Rodgers, despite a moderate box score, was a maestro all day. I thought he really handled the most complex defense you're ever going to see. Waited late in the snap count to see all their movement, and then sometimes he'd speed it up, and just was in total control today and really had an understanding for what they were doing. There were a lot of good performances today, but Rodgers to me was obviously my MVP. I thought he really elevated everybody. Wentz at the half was 16 for 20 for 154 and a pick. At this point, Metcalf had 4 catches for 122 yards and that long touchdown. Like, wow, that was big and fast. Jefferson at this point was tearing the Steelers up, as he really did all day. And frankly, I expected that. He's been a little quiet. At this point, he had 8 for 97. Mason, though, only 9 carries for 26 and a catch for 6. Yards per play, the Steelers were at 7-3. Huge number, but Metcalf's touchdown skews that a little bit. Vikes were at 5-0, but time of possession remains an issue. Steelers were only 12-16 compared to 17-44, and they'd only run 25 plays compared to 33 for Minnesota. Both teams really weren't running the ball that well. 36 yards for the Steelers, 28 for the Vikes. Each team had 2 sacks. Penalties weren't a big deal. 2 for the Steelers, 3 for the Vikes. The Vikes had a turnover. The Steelers didn't, but they had got a kick blocked, which basically is the exact same thing as a turnover, as I tell you. And on third downs, they were really stifling the Vikes, which I thought was a really good sign. 1 of 6, although the Vikings were 1 of 1 on 4th. And they were 3 of 5 on third downs on their own. Final stats, Rodgers ends up 18 for 22. I mean, the ball rarely hit the ground. 200 yards, touchdown, interception, but I thought he was magnificent, to be honest with you. Wentz had some big production, 30 of 45 for 350. You can't allow 350 yards passing. I know Addison had a lot to do with that. But two touchdowns, 2 interceptions for Wentz. Mason ends up, and he's a really good runner, by the way, 16 for 57. That's great. Gainwell ends up 19 for 99. When Warren was inactive, I didn't know what they'd do. I thought maybe they would just throw Caleb Johnson in the deep end and say sink or swim. We're going to give you the ball a bunch. They didn't. They did it with Gainwell. Gainwell ends up with 2 rushing touchdowns, also 6 catches for 35. Good signs. I think that's a short-term fix, though. I also would be very shocked if Warren and Porter both aren't back after the bye. I'd be real shocked. Metcalf ends up with 5 for 126 and a touchdown. Jefferson, 10 catches and seemed like he could get open at will for 126. Addison only had 4 catches, but for 144 with that very long catch and run. The Vikings were sacked 6 times. The Steelers were sacked only twice. So again, Steeler pass rush really showing up huge in this game. I think that's going to be a fixture from now on. But they did lose time of possession again, 26-26 against 33-34. And they only ran 53 plays compared to 72 for the Vikings. These are problems, guys. 3rd down, 4 of 10. Not great. But they held Minnesota to 4 of 14. I mean, the Steelers were so much worse last week on 3rd and 4th downs. Not in this game. That was promising. Although the Vikings were 2 of 3 on 4th. The Steelers were 0 of 1. Steelers end up with a day with 131 yards rushing compared to 70 for the Vikings. I mean, how often can you say lately that they outrushed the opponents by over 60 yards? Something to be said for that. Yards per play, 5.9 for the Steelers. That's certainly promising. Only 5.2 for the Vikings. You'll take it. Red zone, this slipped a little bit for the Steelers. They weren't, there's no way they were going to sustain what they were doing before, but they were only 2 of 5 today, as opposed to the Vikings, who were 2 of 4. They gained 19 first downs compared to 23 for the Vikings. They didn't have any turnovers except for, the block kick. The Vikings had 2. And penalties, 5 for 35. Vikings had some penalty issues, 8 for 82. If you guys ever had to hire someone, you know it can be so time-consuming. Sifting through tons of resumes, trying to get in touch with every candidate. Well, not anymore. Because ZipRecruiter's latest tools and features speed up finding the right people so you can save valuable time. And now you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/audio. Over 320 new resumes are added every month, guys. And if you see candidates you like, you can get their contact information right away. So use ZipRecruiter and save time hiring. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/audio right now and try it for free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/audio. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. All right, bunch of notes here. Again, I thought Rodgers was magnificent. I just kept calling him a maestro. I thought he was in control from the beginning. Well, first play of the game was a sack, and the first series was not pretty at all, but I don't necessarily blame him. But I thought he was in total control against a difficult defense to play against. And I got to give Arthur Smith a lot of credit, too. You know, we saw different stuff. We saw a tush push. We saw what, on first blush being at the game, a wider variety of runs. We saw a lot of Anderson coming in as a 6th offensive lineman, and that's going to be something that's here to stay and hard to deal with. I mean, you put 5 offensive linemen next to Anderson as a 6th, next to Washington, who's basically a 7th, and run behind those 2. Oh, baby. I mean, that is just a lot of beef and a lot to deal with, and I think all future opponents are going to have to really adjust accordingly. I loved seeing that. That was a great adjustment from week to week. I thought this was somewhat of a DK Metcalf statement game, that he is a number 1 receiver. He should be your leading receiver, and I thought that was really promising, especially with Warren not in the mix, although I will say, where's Freiermuth? You know, I mean, we're talking about pass catchers here. I want more from the tight ends, and I'm not really going to blame Washington as much as Freiermuth and Smith. You got to give Gainwell a lot of credit here, too. I mean, he did a workhorse job despite not being a workhorse. And he generated positive EPA on 13 of his 19 carries. I mean, a 68% success rate is tremendous. And that's the highest rate by a Steeler running back in a game since 2016, if not longer, because that's as long as they've tracked this stuff. So really, since EPA has been tracked since 2016, that's the most successful a running back has been down in, down out. Some Vikings notes that I think are really important. I should have mentioned him earlier because I'm a really big fan of his work, but their first defensive tackle off the bench, Redmond, is a really good player, and he ended up with that opening sack that we talked about, as well as another. I would sound smarter if I would have told you this last week, but he's a really good player and makes Allen and Hargrave's life a lot easier. Now, we can't ignore that their right tackle, O'Neal, went out of this game pretty early. Then they lost Kelly. They were already out without their left guard. So they had to put an offensive tackle in there that had no business being in. At least the center has played some. Well, the tackle has too. He's just really bad. But you ended up playing, by the end of the game, deep into the second half after Kelly's concussion, you were playing against 3 backup offensive linemen. So that's not, brush that off. But I also thought Wentz does Wentz things. You know, he makes throws he shouldn't. He certainly takes sacks that he shouldn't. And he did some good things too. There, you see the talent. You see why teams want to take a chance on him, but you also see why he can wear out his welcome pretty quick as well. The defense. I thought this was a really encouraging game by Benton, and I think he's being used better. I can't wait to watch this game a second time and see his alignment issues and how they used him, but he rushed the passer like we remember, and maybe he wasn't out there as much against the run. I don't know. Did he play a ton of nose? It was hard to tell being in the stadium. You can't pause, you can't rewind, and that place was nuts. But man, I mean, swats, sacks, forced fumbles, turnovers. I mean, these are massive trends with this team, not only this year, but going back years and years. And boy, when you do that every game, and I know it's hard to say you can just bank on that, but boy, they change games, and the Steelers are so good at it. 5 Steelers logged at least 3 quarterback pressures today, and 5 tallied at least a sack. It's pretty darn good. I mean, that's everyone chipping in. That's not just Watt dominating or whatever. You know, that was really encouraging, is that defensive front that I thought could be elite. A lot of people were contributing. So just noticing first blush being in the building, still saw a lot of single high. Even though the defense did vary things more, I would like to see less, but they were also playing with a lead, and a lot of their single high safety looks were really deep, like way off the ball, playing with the lead and letting the others in front of them be a little more aggressive. But they had that last layer of defense, that goalie, really, really deep, especially when they were playing with the lead for the majority of the game. Third down defense, I thought that was a really good step in the right direction. I mentioned Jefferson. Now, this doesn't bother me that much. He's a superstar. I mean, he's one of the best receivers that have ever lived. But he got open at will. But if you watch this guy's career, he has more games like this than he does otherwise. He's a superstar. That Addison coverage bust, I'm going to assume that was a coverage bust for the big gain. Disheartening and terrible timing and very scary. And all of a sudden the Vikings fans were getting louder than the Steelers fans. But give Peyton Wilson credit, man. He tracked that thing down. I mean, linebackers don't catch wide receivers, especially 170-pound guys from behind. And that was one of the biggest plays of the game. I know that they end up scoring, but still, wow. And then I'm sure the place is going to erupt when they watch that on tape tomorrow. I felt like Elliott was a real stabilizing force and made some plays, and his absence was notable, as was his addition. Really good, strong run defense. I mean, yeah, they had a couple runs, okay. That's NFL football. But overall, and I know their O-line was a mess, of course. But this is the second game in a row where you're like, okay, I'll take this run defense. That's great. I mentioned the punt that got just blasted into the end zone. I don't know if Waitman was told to do that or if he just did it on his own or couldn't get the ball to land inside the 10 or inside the 15, but I didn't understand that at all. To punt in that situation was questionable to begin with, but if so, that means you should trust your punter to be able to drop one in to at least gain more yardage than 19 yards. I mean, if you're just going to tell them to blast it into the end zone, all you're gaining is 19 yards. Like, come on. Last two things I have are on the injury front. I did not hear Tomlin's press conference. Again, my life was a little weird. I was outside their locker room waiting for a bus when he was doing that. And from what I understand and frankly from what I know, the one that we need to worry about is Austin. We'll see. Obviously, the bye week could help, but I worry that one might be a substantial injury. And at that point, might you start kicking the tires on a Jacoby Myers or some receiver on a bad team at this stage of the game? Because you might even consider that anyways. But that's something I'm going to think about throughout the week. And last thing I have, back to Rodgers. Now, we know the ball comes out quick with him. He is super decisive. But 73% of his passes came out with under 2.5 seconds to throw. 2.5 is like the magic number. Under 2.5 is really moving quick, and if you get a pressure under 2.5, that's really, really hard to do as a defense. You're almost unblocked. So 73% of his passes were that quick, that decisive, and yet he still had an 81% completion percentage and 133 passer rating when the ball came out in 2.5 seconds or less. Hard to do. It's hard to be that efficient. And you're not going to rack up the huge stats. But again, I thought Rodgers really, really shined in this game. And thank the Lord that this game didn't get away from them, because boy, would the tune be different. And it almost did. And I can't even imagine what the Rooney family might think if you blew a lead in Ireland that's so important to them when you were clearly the better team for at least 75 to 80% of the game. I mean, there was a point there where I just said to the guys around me, I'm like, this is a beatdown. I mean, this is a blowout, whether it's not showing up on the scoreboard or not. But they also didn't put up a ton of points to put the team away and to make it, that close. But I think most and almost everything we saw today was very positive. And you got a bye week, and then you got the Browns coming to Pittsburgh after they have to play this Vikes team who gets to stay in Europe, and the Browns don't. They got to travel here, Europe, and back, and not have a bye. And the Browns aren't in a great situation now either. And then you get Jake Browning. So you could really put some money in the bank right now, especially coming off this bye. So almost all positive, as was my trip to Ireland. I'm not sure when we'll talk next, but I'm looking forward to it. See ya.